Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's having a great week so far. The weekend's just round the corner, so hang in there. And yeah, wherever you are, either it's Thursday evening, Friday morning, yeah, just a few more hours, and then, 2 days of not having to bother about work. Anyways, guys, welcome to episode 13 of Wasted Wanderers podcast. Before we kick off, I want to remind everyone of the mission we are on in this channel. I would say we are a little behind the curve at this point, but we are trying to get to 100 subscribers by the end of April. We still have a week. So if we, put the or just flat out the gas pedal on our car, we can still get there. Thank you for all the love and support you have been giving us so far. JD, your thoughts?
Yeah, hello everyone. Not much to add. It's a awesome day, awesome weekend ahead, and thank you everybody for listening. Yeah, let's get started, Abhijit.
Okay, let me just make sure. Okay, yeah, here we are, and I'm gonna pull this up. I think everyone has seen this one. Uh, Apple is now gonna get a new CEO. His name is John Ternus, and everyone has been talking about how this is a shift in what Apple's philosophy would be moving forward. I almost want to argue that I don't think it was that much different even now, even under Tim Cook. Apple has always prided itself as a hardware company or hardware and an integration company. They have been doing that so far. Under Tim Cook, there was a lot of supply chain optimization, there was a lot of fragmentation of products, so that Apple could start making revenue off, selling you dongles like this piece of crap. Uh, and Apple also got big time into the subscription model of iCloud and everything. Of course, all that will continue as that is a huge cash cow. What's interesting for me about John Ternus is he is an Apple product throughout, and he's a hardcore engineer. He's a hardware engineer, right? So I have a screenshot here of his LinkedIn profile. So he did his undergrad from UPenn, held another job for 4 years, and then since then just been with Apple. And 25 years, we've been hearing that number a lot. I think he obviously understands the company in and out. He breathes, dreams, lives in the company. This is always a lovely thing to see when companies actually promote their internal talent to their topmost positions and they don't, bring someone from outside, hashtag Starbucks, when they decide to bring in a consultant to try and run a brand. Um, anyway, I won't shit on them today. Uh, because I think they've gotten their act together again, mostly because of that. But what I interpret with John Ternus getting this position is Apple has been on the sidelines of the AI race till now. And the reason for that is they haven't had to be in the depth of it. They have the largest ecosystem, I guess second largest if Android is considered the largest. They have the second largest ecosystem in the mobile space on which all these AI models are accessed by everyone. Your ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, etc. By daily users get access on iPhones, Macs, you name it, right? So they haven't had the need to be in the AI race. They also came out with a paper, I think a year and a half ago, where they talked about how these models don't actually learn anything. They just make inferences based on all the data that has been given to them. And fast forward to today, you have a hardware engineer who's going to be at the helm of the company. Now, Apple has a great set of chips for their iPhones and their MacBooks. I feel Apple will now start putting trained models that can run locally on devices. And that's why you have a hardware engineer who will be leading this revolution. You literally need someone who understands hardware so that Apple can then maybe build their own models. I don't know, can't predict. But at least in the interim, we might see, okay, a locked up version. I think Apple has a deal with Google. So a locked up version of Google Gemini running locally on iPhones and MacBooks. At least that's where I think this is headed. JD, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It kind of reminds me of when Google selected Sundar Pichai as their CEO. Like, he was also internally promoted. He's also an engineer. He also understands the whole tech stack. So I kind of see this new CEO John Ternus as kind of like that, and I think it's a good bet by Apple. I do want to give my flowers to Tim Cook though. Like, Apple was defined by Tim Cook's operational brilliance for over a decade. When Steve Jobs appointed him, he wasn't really well known. So, if Steve Jobs was a product guy, then Tim Cook is a operational guy. So he is responsible for Apple's big, massive supply chain, which has been a great moat for Apple over other tech companies. Like, I don't think you can name any other company that has the operational complexity and hardware supremacy like Apple. Now, the new CEO, John Ternus, comes from a hardware side, as Abhi pointed out. Uh, he is the lead behind the M series chips and the modern Mac revival, both of which are blockbuster products. His promotion puts a deep hardware expert at the very top of the company. Now, this is important at this time because AI and LLMs are being used everywhere. So I think Apple is betting that hardware is going to be an important ingredient going forward. And I mean, there's a reason why Mac minis are sold out everywhere, right? You can't find a better AI machine for that price. Like, it's impossible. And they've also signed this huge deal with Google to help build their Apple models. So that is going to be a key factor. So they need someone who understands all this from ground up. And I don't think there's a better guy than John Ternus. Now, Tim Cook is not going away 100%. He'll still remain as the executive chairman to manage the massive global supply chain. I think he'll also handle investor relations and politics, governmental politics, international politics, something that he's really good at.
So, do you
So this
mean,
transition,
JD, that Tim Cook will be the one giving the next president a bloody plaque of gold as well, or will it be John Turner's? I guess time will tell, but continue.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, it could still be Tim Cook because I don't know, for some reason Trump really likes him. Maybe it's the gold thing he gave, or maybe because Tim Cook is a quiet guy. But the transition is designed to be like seamless, and it should be, right? Like, it should be invisible to the stock market because Apple is the most valuable company on earth, and it needs that stability. And I guess the goal is to maintain the record breaking profits that Apple has with iPhone in the AI age. So, in short, Tim Cook era is ending. Apple has just promoted the man who has built the most powerful chips to be the new CEO. We are watching the most important leadership handoff in the history of Silicon Valley.
I'm also glad to see an engineer at the helm of an engineering company. I mean, I know Nvidia has that already. I believe AMD as well. Lisa Su, she was also an engineering product. Um, Satya Nadella is also an engineer. He rose up the ranks. So is Sundar Pichai. Um,
Yeah,
I don't know
Nvidia,
what I would call
Jensen
Elon
Huang.
Musk. Is he an engineer or is he a?
I
I
would
mean, yeah,
classify him
he's
as
an engineer. He's an
yeah, I would
engineer.
classify him
I
as an
mean,
engineer. Yeah.
it's
So cool, awesome story.
it's
Let's move
good to
on to the
see
next
all the
one.
Mac 7 be run by people who understand their products rather than just financial statements. Um, all
Yeah.
right, guys, let's get to the next one. JD, kick us off.
Yeah, so this one is interested because Abhi came out with a story, Cash App, and I wanted to talk about the parent company of Cash App for a while now. So that's Block. So basically, I'm going to talk about the right side, and then Abhi is going to talk about the left side. So Block, which is the parent of Cash, uh, is founded by Jack Dorsey. So you might know him from he founded Twitter. He was a CEO there also. And then he founded another company called Square, which he renamed to Block. And that's where we are now. So he put out this manifesto, you can say, which kind of flew into the layoffs that happened at Block. So in this manifesto, he writes some very interesting stuff. So what he is saying is that he is going to replace all the middle managers in his companies with AI driven coordination. So he's dismantling the traditional corporate ladder that he had in the company. And now software is going to be taking over the logistic work of managing people and projects. So what he's trying to do is he's going to have small autonomous team he called it the cube. um, and these tiny units are going to focus on single very specific problems at Block with total independence. So he's betting that these thousands of micro teams are going to work in parallel, and he's going to be managing them directly. So his goal is to manage 6,000 employees. That's his goal. So I don't know, like, but I do agree with some of his views that like we have reached a stage where every level of management is slowing down decisions. Like I've seen it in my previous companies. It adds friction, it adds big office politics and endless meetings, and people who are building the stuff have no visibility or say over how customers are using it. And on the flip side, the CEO is also abstracted away from all the decision making by these middle managers. So basically, this is a blueprint of a new kind of a company, and Block is using AI to route information and tasks between employees automatically. So this is like a first attempt at creating a new kind of a company. And Abhi, it's interesting because apparently Mark Zuckerberg was inspired by this essay, and that led to him to create like a AI first organization that has a 50 to 1 ratio of employees to managers. And you must have heard about the layoffs also. Maybe we'll talk about that in the next one. There's so many layoffs ongoing. It's impossible to talk about all of them. Um, but a lot more CEOs are implementing this as we speak. So will the bet pay off? I don't know, but as I said, I agree with some aspects of it. Like, I would say, if your job is just managing people and not doing anything else, not producing work that actually makes the team go fast or makes the customer uh, have more say, then you should just reconsider what you're doing. Like, this is a good time to go back to basics and learn besides or alongside AI. So, if you're a middle manager, you should focus on becoming a builder, like in any domain. It could be technical, consulting, sales, marketing, design, product, but just don't be a boring old manager who just collects status updates from his directs and just update some random spreadsheets. So, in short, Jack Dorsey just deleted the corporate ladder. Block is getting rid of managers and letting AI run the company. We are watching the birth of a new kind of corporate structure. So it's very interesting. I would love to know your thoughts, Abhi.
I think the idea in principle can hold value. If you flatten organizations and if your technology is that good, they could potentially function. I personally think it's not going to be scalable, at least not with the current level of AI we have. And I also think that for this to be beneficial for any organization, you cannot have centralized LLMs. You are not, the costs will skyrocket to a point where companies will just revert back to hiring employees again. Because I want to I want to give this a little bit of a comical twist. Let's see how this goes. I just decided to download one thing from the from a chat that we were having today. JD and I were having this before. So it's 12:02. Okay, let me pull that up. Yeah. Here is, this is not a meme, guys. This is not a meme. This is not a meme. And if we remember, Claude was the best performant when it was given. I think, I don't know which job they gave all these LLMs. Was it a software engineer's job or what, JD? They gave
Probably.
all these LLMs a software engineer's job. Claude was the best, and it came in at 5% of the time being correct. So this is Claude. This is Sonnet. So I don't have Opus. Now let me show you what Opus did. Slightly better, but here we go. This is what Opus said. As we can see, these models are nowhere near doing the job of a manager. If they can't count the number of peas in strawberry, I think, okay, I'll give credit to Sonnet. It said you probably spelt strawberry wrong, and that's actually pretty good. But it still tried to count and somehow came up with two peas, right? There is another meme test that's been going on, right? Okay, if I have to, I need to wash my car. The car wash is 100 meters away. Should I take my car or not? To Grok's credit, it got that correct. It was like the point is to get the car washed. It doesn't matter how far it is.
Oh,
So,
really?
to take your damn car. Chat GPT didn't. And if I can find those screenshots, I'll bring them up next time. But look, I'm not saying can AI get there? Yes, but I also think we have a little bit of a way to go because not with the current levels. There's a lot of hype around this. Anytime. a Mac 7 comes out and says that, they have figured out the next big frontier of AI models. I think it was Anthropic that was saying that we have built something so amazing that we can't release it to the public yet. Was it about Opus? I don't know. And it, oh God. Uh, and then we just saw what Opus is capable of, or not capable of thereof. So I'll take that with a pinch of salt. I think everything in the world of AI is geared towards getting an investment. I don't think that's a wrong thing because the rule in the world of startups is the loudest one wins, not necessarily the best product. And so all of them are always screaming at the top of their lungs. I personally don't necessarily take Mark Zuckerberg all that seriously just because personally I don't know which valuable product has Meta ever created. Like Facebook is the holy grail of the distraction economy that we are in today. Again, I'll probably never say no to a job offer from Meta, don't get me wrong. I'm totally open to admitting my double standard. But what I'm saying is products that have value need not necessarily win in the world of startups. Now, that is not a hard and fast rule. There are a lot of products with great value that have eventually, you know, gotten their share of success. I mean, at one point, Apple was a startup, maybe not in the sense of not in the sense of today's Silicon Valley, but at least it started out of a garage. Um, so did Google. I guess it didn't start out of a garage, but they had a small shed, three people warehouse they were using as their initial office. Um, Amazon had pretty humble beginnings as a online bookstore. Um, so all I'm saying is, can this work in theory? Yes, but I just see a heap of roses and or just a heap of rose petals, and there's one fan that can come and just blow all this over. I don't know what that fan would be, but trying to implement something like this on a company of, let's say, more than 100 people, probably not possible unless you have locally running models which are affordable. I mean, imagine the amount of tokens you would need to run a company across which is operating in, let's say, 5 countries, has 500 people. It'll be in the realm of ridiculousness that the companies will just say, fine, with humans I will have agency problems, but at least the amount of contextual awareness they will bring to the table, it'll far surpass any AI model's capabilities right now. First, learn to count the number of peas in strawberry, and then we'll talk. Um, I'll go to the one on the left. This is Hash App targeting a new kind of customer, 6 to 12-year-olds. When you read this article, you feel like, oh my God, this is so wonderful. Personally, I've not seen more ridiculous and shitty news in the world of tech in a long time. This is your same playbook, but being applied at, in my opinion, a horrifying scale. Because in this story, it says that up to the age of 12, only a few people will be able to deposit money into the kids' accounts, which is fine, I guess. But ultimately, if you're getting kids hooked onto your app, 6 to 12-year-olds, I'm very concerned about the ethics of that. To top that, at 13, they will be able to graduate to their own accounts. The United States, Canada, pretty much all over the Western world, the minimum age for an adult is 16. I think US has 18, Canada has 18. Drinking age 21. all across Canada as well, except Quebec. You are giving a teen who's just starting their teens the ability to have their own unrestricted access to cash. Because the next thing will be, okay, let's give credit cards through this Cash app to kids, because now they have their own account. They have graduated. I mean, I hope everyone can see what the proposition here is. Get get kids hooked onto your app from the age of 6, and then at 13 they suddenly have a level of financial freedom that some kids may be able to handle it, most probably won't. And you can, I mean, yeah, you can, if anyone disagrees, please leave us a comment, and we can have a discussion. I'm not in favor of this. I hope someone in the legal sphere looks at this and stops this from ever happening. At least having the app as a debit card, it shouldn't even be allowed for what the hell, 6-year olds. I mean, no, I can't think of one reason on why this is a good idea. JD, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, on the face of it, I agree. Like, when will 6-year-olds use cash app? I mean, I can imagine like in 15 years, they won't even know what cash is because they've been on an app all their life. Uh, I don't know. Like, I'm kind of conflicted. I agree with all your thoughts, but um, from a libertarian side, I can also say that like everybody is entitled to use the app that they want. So if kids want to use it, they can. I guess the article also said with adults permission. So I mean, it's the parents responsibility that the kids use it responsibly. um, I think there's some law in US that after 13 you can collect data or whatever. So that's why that's the distinction. Even if you see Facebook has separate apps for people under 13 and over 13. So this is kind of like that. But yeah, I say like ultimately the responsibility falls on the parents. Will there be some abuses? Yes. But I don't think like we should stop, enterprises from, going where there is a need for a product. If there isn't a need, then people will not use it, let the market decide. But yeah, I don't want like kind of a ban here, but maybe some rules would be nice. Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully the legal sphere can at least decide on some reasonable limits within the framework of democracy on what's the correct age for for kids to be able to have a level of access to cash or money. um, I'm personally on the side that I support all these laws that are coming out around, I think, kids up to a certain age. I think Australia started this. India is thinking about these kind of laws where certain where kids can't have accounts on certain apps before a certain age. I support that. I would love to see Cash App being put in that bucket. Um, I'm not against freedom. I personally feel that at least till 16, there should be some sort of a restriction on Black Mirror exposure for kids. At least till 16, ideally 18. And after that, fine, get your smartphones, get everything you need. Because in that age, if you get hooked onto something that ends up draining your personal finances, that ends up draining your intellect, that ends up draining your uh, and that ends up draining your mental faculties, it can it can become irreversible. There is some medical research to show that the brain is not fully developed even up to 30s. I think there's some urban myth to that, but I think we define adult as 18, 21, wherever we are, whatever that number might be, because there was an understanding that it takes a certain amount of time for the human mind and the human consciousness to evolve to a point where, okay, now you can make absolutely all your decisions on your own, and we can be reasonably certain. Of course, it's not a guarantee, but we can be reasonably certain that you won't go in a detrimental direction. Of course, does it ensure that no crime ever happens? No, that would be foolish to say. Anyways, guys, we'll follow the story further. For now, let's move to our last one for the day. So, yeah, Canada Post is reporting a loss of $1.57 billion in 2025. That's what they've already reported that basically. And a related news which came out, well, very recently this year again, is that Canada Post is beginning to remove or beginning to move from door to door mail delivery to community mailboxes. Now, Canada is a massive country. For those who may not have the context, Canada is a massive country with a very small population, and that small population is also concentrated in basically six major cities. Your Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, Winnipeg, and Ottawa, I guess. So there are some smaller ones, but overall, there are a few large cities, and then the rest of them is like towns of 1,000 people, 500 people, 30 people. And then there are just massive areas which are completely empty. Having said that, I think it does make sense for Canada Post to actually club down some zip codes and say, okay, here you will have a community mailbox instead of door to door delivery, just because there are not enough people. But I have a question here to Canada Post is one, I mean, you've had door to door delivery for a very, very long time. What is it now that you suddenly have to think about this? One argument that the story is giving is, well, there are other alternatives. Your UPS, DHL, FedEx. Those have existed for a long time in Canada as well. The first sentence of the second article here, the post beginning work to move from door to door mail delivery, says they are in talks with unions. And that is the elephant in the room that Canada Post is still not addressing. In fact, no government, I guess the federal government in some aspect is addressing this because they're trying to reduce the size of the federal workforce. But I think that's the biggest elephant in the room that's not being addressed. The second thing is obviously Canada has an aging population. So a lot of the people who were able to work very efficiently, they're just getting into retirement ages. And that's why attracting people to the country has become more important because fertility rates are dropping. But the minute you talk about more immigration to Canada, especially with the previous administration's policies, which ended up overloading the country, trying to fix a problem through immigration is just not going to go well for any government at this point. So none of them would even get the approval. So as a band-aid, let's start with community mailboxes, is my interpretation. And the one rule that all band-aids follow is they wear off. And I think that's what will happen here. You move to some communities, you identify some communities, they get a community mailbox. Sure, people in those communities will probably stop bothering with Canada Post altogether, which would then allow the private players to charge even higher fees for any types of delivery. So now, from a discretionary expense in the first place, this becomes an ultra discretionary expense. And eventually, if not enough people use the UPS, FedEx, DHL services, Purolator, whatever, then even those companies will exit, and suddenly you have communities that are left without any Canada Post or without any way to receive any mail. I don't think that's such a far off scenario that it's hard to imagine that. I think the elephant in the room is, how does Canada Post increase its efficiency and is basically able to produce more with less? And the answer lies in moving towards a fairer agreement with the unions. I'm not going to say disband all unions. I'm not an extremist of that type. But we have seen so many strikes with Canada Post, one after the other. Just last year, every province has some sort of a strike going on all the bloody time. Ontario teachers are striking. Alberta teachers were striking. Um, BC General Employees Union was striking last year. All of this just all last year. The Ontario teachers was maybe a few years before that. But in the past 5 to 6 years that I've been in Canada, I've seen at least eight union related strikes. And it's getting to a point. It's personally, as a non-union citizen who works a private job and then tries to run a 1.5 YouTube channels to try and see, okay, if there is another avenue. It's just frustrating. JD, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to think of causes, but there's a big one right in front of us, right? Like all government agencies or public utilities by design, they don't react quickly to market changes. Right now, if you think about Canada, when Canada Post started, there weren't as many people as now. You know, there has been so much immigration in Canada. I think now we are at 30 million plus, right? People. And so these public utilities, they need to be revisited, how they are funded, what are the prices. And a lot of times, all this gets bogged down politically. So if Canada Post needs to raise their prices, they need to go through a huge bureaucratic process, right? Whereas FedEx or UPS does not need to do that. They can respond quickly. So, my question is, should uh, Canada Post even be a government agency? Can't it go public or go private, so it can be handled by people who actually know what's happening in the market? um, I feel another cause is, obviously, as you pointed out, private competitors are winning the parcel war. So um, Canada Post's market share dropped from 62% to 27% in just 5 years. So they're losing the last mile battle with tech driven giants, most notably Amazon. So Amazon used to do a lot of Canada Post packages. Now they have their whole infrastructure, right from their packaging to their warehouse to their own planes to their own fleet of vehicles, right? And another cause is that federal law forces Canada Post to deliver to every home. So this is by law, right? So this has a high fixed cost. So if there are 30 or 40 million people, it's just crushing the agency. um, and this mandate for universal service is becoming a massive economic burden. And lastly, what you pointed out, pensions and unions, they don't make it easy. It's really easy for these kind of organization to add people, get them on their pension plans and on their unions, but really hard to get rid of them when they want to pivot or change. So I would say, like, Canada Post is a $1 billion financial disaster. Uh, it lost $1.5 billion in 2025. This deficit tripled in just 12 months. So think about that. Uh, it's just burning cash at unsustainable rate. So something needs to be done quick. And last thing I want to point out is Canada is not unique in this. So the same thing is happening in the US. Um, the US has a similar postal service called USPS, and it's losing even more money than Canada Post. So its losses were $6.5 billion last year. So compared to $1.5 billion for Canada Post, right? But the difference that I see here is US is taking a much more aggressive approach to survival. So they are forcing a 10-year plan to centralize hubs, do community mailboxes, and spike up the prices. So US is choosing tough love, whereas Canada is choosing politics. So I hope that this fixed cost goes away. But the to end, I want to say that Canada Post is facing a $1.5 billion reality check. Market share is vanishing, business model is broken. So, are we watching the final days of the traditional mail service? I think so.
I mean, I personally don't want to see Canada Post go away because every government provided utility touches the last mile, right? Touches the most remote communities where private players don't have a economic incentive to go. But that doesn't mean those people don't deserve that service. But to your point, JD, if Canada Post had more wiggle room to one, increase prices, and two, to hire and fire more easily, they could have taken a similar route like USPS is trying to take, in addition to community mailboxes, so that they can get to efficiency. So that even though there will be a significant number of zip codes where it would just be a loss making operation, the hubs of your operation, your Torontos, Montreals, Vancouvers, they will generate enough money for you to overall at least break even, maybe generate a small profit. So, with that, guys, we come to an end of our episode today. JD, close us off today.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. We read each and every comment, and we make it a passion to connect with you guys. So please spread the word, subscribe, comment, call us out, hit that like button, and we'll see you next time.
And don't forget Mission 100 by the end of April. See you guys.
See ya.